Hello everyone, I'm Vivek Agarwal. I'm a chartered accountant, company secretary in LLB, and in this video we'll be discussing assessment procedure in a rapid revision manner. The first section that we are discussing is section 142 subsection 1, which is inquiry before assessment. Before doing the assessment, the assessing officer does the inquiry under this section, section 142 subsection 1. This section talks about two things. The first one is the return. Under section 142 subsection 1 clause 1, the assessing officer issues a notice to the assessee requiring him to furnish the return of income if the assessee has not furnished the return within the time limit under section 139 subsection 1. Let us read the section 142 subsection 1, inquiry before assessment. If assessee has not filed return within time under section 139 subsection 1. This means if the assessee has not filed the return within time limit under section 139 subsection 1, then the assessing officer may issue a notice requiring him to furnish the return. So what is the condition for issuing the notice under section 142 subsection 1 clause 1 is the assessee should not have filed the return under section 139 subsection 1. Then only the assessing officer can issue a notice requiring him to furnish the return. Now coming to the next clause, section 142 subsection 1 clause 2, for the purpose of making assessment. For the purpose of making an assessment, the assessing officer can issue notice to produce books of accounts and documents. Why is this notice issued under clause 2? For making an assessment, the assessing officer can issue notice to produce the books of accounts and documents. Here, clause 1, in clause 1, what did we discuss? The assessee has not filed the return of income under section 139 subsection 1, then the assessing officer may issue a notice requiring him to furnish the return of income. So clause 1 talks about the return of income. Clause 2, first part talks about books of accounts and other documents. Moreover, these books of accounts and other documents can be asked for maximum 3 years prior to the relevant previous year. So for the relevant previous year, the books of accounts can be asked, and prior to relevant previous year, 3 years books of accounts or other information can be asked. So to furnish information including details of assets and liabilities, prior approval of joint commissioner is required if information demanded is related to assets and liabilities and not included in books of accounts. So what does this say? To furnish the information including details of assets and liabilities, assessing officer will issue the notice under clause 2 to the assessee to make him furnish the information including the details of assets and liabilities. So in clause 1, what did we discuss? The assessing officer issues notice to the assessee requiring him to furnish the return of income. So under clause 1, return of income is asked. Under the clause 2, first part, books of accounts and other documents are asked. In the clause 2, second part, information about the assets and liabilities are asked. Here, point to be noted is prior approval of joint commissioner is required if information demanded is related to assets and liabilities which are not included in books of accounts. If the information that is asked for is included in the books of accounts, then the prior approval of joint commissioner is not necessary. But if the information is not included in the books of accounts, then the prior approval of joint commissioner is necessary. So section 142 subsection 1 talks about inquiry before assessment. Inquiry before assessment. It has two parts, 142.1.1, 142.1.2. Under 142.1.1, the assessee, the condition is that the assessee should not have filed his return of income under section 139 subsection 1. Then the assessing officer can issue a notice and ask the assessee to submit the return of income. Under 142.1.2, there are two parts. First part is that the assessing officer can issue a notice. The assessing officer can issue a notice to the assessee asking him to furnish the books of accounts and documents for maximum 3 years prior to the relevant previous year. In the second part of clause 2, the assessing officer can issue a notice to the assessee demanding the information about the assets and liabilities. If the assets and liabilities information is not included in the books of accounts, then the assessing officer has to obtain prior approval of joint commissioner. Now, section 142.1.2 is generally combined with the assessment notice. Section 142.1.2 is generally combined with the assessment notice. Either it can be issued, the assessing officer can issue 143 subsection 3 with 142.1.2 or 153A plus 142.12. So this 142.12 is combined with the assessment notice either under section 143.3 or 153A. Now this notice under section 142.12, this notice is issued whether or not you have filed the return of income. Here when we talk about 142.11, this notice can be issued only if the SSC has not furnished the return of income under section 139.1. 142.11 can be issued only when the SSC has not furnished the return of income under section 139.1. The notice under section 142.12 can be issued whether or not the SSC has furnished the return of income. The filing or non-filing of return of income is not a criteria for issuing the notice under section 142.12. To summarize, we are discussing section 142 subsection 1. We are discussing section 142 subsection 1. In this 142 subsection 1, we are talking about two things. First thing is 142.11, where the SSC has not filed the return of income, the assessing officer asks for the return of income. 142.12 again has two parts. The first part being the books of accounts and documents can be asked. The second part being the information about the assets and liabilities can be asked. So return of income, books of accounts and other documents, information about assets and liabilities. Let us proceed. Now section 142.2a is about the special audit by department. First, we'll understand what do we mean by assessing officer. Here we are saying that the assessing officer has to obtain the approval of the joint commissioner before asking the information about the assets and liabilities which are not included in the books of accounts. So first we should understand what is the meaning of assessing officer. Assessing officer means the joint commissioner, assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner, income tax officer. These three designation officers are called assessing officer. I repeat, the joint commissioner, the assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner, the income tax officer. The joint commissioner, assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner, and the income tax officer. These three are called assessing officers. Now we are discussing section 142.2a, which is about the special audit by department. Assessing officer may, at any stage of proceeding, require SSC to get his books of accounts specially audited under this section. So the assessing officer, by assessing officer, what do we mean? We mean the joint commissioner, the assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner, the income tax officer. So the assessing officer may at any stage of the proceeding, let that be any stage of the proceeding. The assessing officer may means at his own will and wish. The assessing officer may at any stage of the proceeding require the SSC to get his books of accounts specially audited under this section. The SSC cannot say that my books of accounts are already audited under section 44AB or any other section. Even if the books of accounts are already audited, this section empowers the assessing officer to get the books of accounts of the SSC specially audited under section 142.2a, that is a special audit. So the assessing officer may means it is at his own discretion. The assessing officer at any stage of the proceeding may require the SSC to get his books of accounts specially audited under this section 142.2a. The assessing officer can direct special audit having regards to the complexities in accounts, volume of accounts, doubt about correctness of accounts, multiplicity of transactions in the accounts, and if it is in the interest of revenue, that is department. So under what circumstances special audit can be conducted? Under what circumstances special audit can be conducted? Special audit can be conducted depending upon the complexities of the accounts, the volume of accounts, doubt about the correctness of accounts, multiplicity of transactions. 4 points on this basis, on any of these bases, special audit can be conducted. First being the complexities, second about the volume, correctness, and multiplicity of transactions. Complexity, correctness, volume, multiplicity. Complexity, correctness, volume, and multiplicity. Complexity, correctness, volume, and multiplicity. On these four conditions, if any of these conditions are satisfied, the assessing officer can order the SSE to have the books of accounts specially audited under section 142 2A. Direction can be issued with prior approval of CIT or CCIT, Commissioner of Income Tax or Chief Commissioner of Income Tax. The direction for special audit can be issued only after obtaining prior approval of CIT and CCIT. Prior approval of CCIT or CIT is required for conducting the special audit. The books of accounts audited by chartered accountant, nominated by CIT or CCIT, and remuneration of auditor shall be paid by central government. So basically this is the audit on behalf of the government. The chartered accountant who is doing the audit is not representing the SSE. The chartered accountant who will be doing the special audit is representing the government. Hence, the fees of the auditor is also paid by the central government. So books of accounts are audited by a chartered accountant. That chartered accountant is nominated not by the SSE. That chartered accountant is nominated by the Chief Commissioner of Income Tax or the Commissioner of Income Tax. As the government nominates the chartered accountant, the fees of the chartered accountant is also paid by the central government only. If the fees is paid by the client or the SSE, then the chartered accountant might get biased, right? Hence, the government is paying the fees, the government is doing the appointment so that the chartered accountant is independent of the client. Direction can be given even if the accounts already audited under section 44 AB or any other law. So the SSE cannot say that my books of accounts are already audited under section 44 AB or any other law. In spite of being already audited, the government can appoint a chartered accountant to conduct special audit of the SSE. An opportunity of being heard must be given before directing. So before the special audit is directed, the government is expected to, the department is expected to give an opportunity of being heard to the SSE. Audit report has to be submitted within time allowed by the assessing officer, which can be extended by, but maximum time limit must not exceed 180 days. So the CCIT or CIT appoints the chartered accountant for the special audit. Special audit is conducted by the chartered accountant. The fees is paid by the government. The chartered accountant has to submit the report to the assessing officer within maximum period of 180 days. Within maximum period of 180 days, that is 6 months, the chartered accountant has to issue the audit report to the government. Special audit can be directed for a particular segment of accounts, that is sales, purchase, etc. So the special audit need not be an audit of the entire aspects of the SSE. It can be for a specific aspect also. Like if the government is having, or the department is having some doubt about sales, the department is having some doubt about the purchases, then the department can order special audit for specific area also. It need not be necessary that all aspects of accounts are covered for audit. Failure to get the books of accounts audited under this section or failure to furnish the audit report within the time allowed will lead to best judgment assessment under section 144, and it also attracts a penalty of 10,000 under section 272A1. So if the books of accounts are not audited in time, if the books of accounts are not audited under this section, or the audit report is not submitted within the time specified, then the best judgment assessment can be conducted on the SSE under section 144. In addition to the best judgment assessment, a penalty of 10,000 shall be levied. Let us do a quick recap of this section. We're talking about section 142 subsection 2A, which is about special audit. The assessing officer may at any stage of the proceedings, not necessarily during the proceeding, before the proceeding, after the proceeding may not be necessary. The assessing officer may at any stage of the proceeding, require the SSE to get his books of accounts audited. Assessing officer means the joint commissioner, the assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, or the income tax officer. One second. Yeah. So the assessing officer means the joint commissioner, the assistant commissioner, the deputy commissioner, or the income tax officer. Any of these three officers can be the assessing officers. So the assessing officer can direct the SSC at any stage of the proceeding to get his books of accounts audited. That audit will be conducted by a chartered accountant who is appointed by the CCIT or the CIT. The fees will also be paid by the government. The chartered accountant will submit a report to the government within 6 months, maximum 180 days. And if there is any delay on issuing the report or conducting of audit, the best judgment assessment will be done on the SSC. And in addition to this, a penalty of rupees 10,000 will also be levied. The remuneration is paid by the government to the auditor. The chartered accountant is appointed by the government. And what are the conditions for issuing special audit? There are 4 basic conditions for conducting special audit. First is that the complexity in the books of accounts. Second is about the correctness of books of accounts. Third is about the volume of transactions. Fourth is about multiplicity of the transactions. 4 conditions: complexities, correctness, volume, and multiplicity of transactions. Depending upon these, either of these 4 conditions, in the interest of the revenue, the department will order special audit. For this special audit to be conducted, prior approval of CCIT or CIT is required. For this, for the assessing officer to issue the directions for special audit, he has to first obtain the approval of CIT or CCIT. And this audit is in addition to 44AB audit or any other law. Suppose the SSC says that his books of accounts are already audited under section 44AB or any other law, that does not hamper this power. In spite of those books of accounts being already audited, the assessing officer can give a direction to the SSC to get the books of accounts specially audited by a chartered accountant. One more aspect to this point is that it is not necessary that all the aspects of the books must be covered for auditing. If the assessing officer is having a doubt regarding sales, he will order the audit of only sales aspect. If the assessing officer is having a doubt about the purchases, he will order for audit of only purchases. So it is not necessary that all the aspects of books of accounts will be audited on the special audit. Even one of the aspects can also be picked up for audit. So that is the overall summary of special audit. Now let us resume the screen sharing. Now, reference to the valuation officer, section 142A. Section 142A talks about the reference to valuation officer. The assessing officer may, at his discretion, for the purpose of assessment, make a reference to valuation officer. Why is making a reference to the valuation officer? For the purpose of assessment. The assessing officer may, at his own discretion, for the purpose of assessment, make a reference to the valuation officer to estimate the value, including the fair market value of any. So the assessing officer may, at his own discretion, why? For the purpose of assessment, will make a reference to whom? To the valuation officer to estimate the value. The name itself is valuation officer. So valuation officer values what? Will value the property value. The assessing officer may, for the purpose of assessment, make a reference to the valuation officer to estimate the value, including the fair market value of any asset or property or investments. The value is determined for what? The value is determined for any asset or property or investments. Any asset or property or investments. Valuation officer shall estimate. Shall. The assessing officer may refer. Once the assessing officer refers to the valuation officer, then it becomes mandatory for the valuation officer to give an estimation of the value. So the assessing officer may refer the case, but assessing valuation officer shall estimate the value of the asset after considering evidences the SSC may produce or gathered by the valuation officer. On what basis the valuation officer estimates the value of the asset is after considering the evidences which the SSC gives the valuation officer. So the SSC gives the evidences to the valuation officer, or the valuation officer himself gathers the evidence from various sources and values the property. Property means the asset, the property, or the investments. Valuation officer shall send copy of the report to the assessing officer and SSC within 6 months from the end of the month in which a reference was made by the assessing officer to the valuation officer. So the valuation officer, after valuing, will issue the report to the assessing officer and to the assessee. The valuation officer, after valuing the property, shall issue a copy of the report to the assessing officer and the assessee within 6 months. What is the time limit to issue the report? 6 months from end of the month in which such reference was made. Suppose the reference was made on 15th October 2019. End of the month is 31st October 2019. From 31st October 2019, 6 months are provided or given to the valuation officer to submit a report, a copy of the report to the assessing officer as well as the assessee. The assessing officer may consider such report after giving a reasonable opportunity of being heard. Now, after receiving the report also, it is at the discretion of the assessing officer either to accept the report of the valuation officer or not to take it into consideration. Here, if you see, again, the word may is used. So the assessing officer may refer the case to valuation officer. The valuation officer shall do the valuation and submit a report to the assessing officer. Then assessing officer may use the report. So the assessing officer may consider such report after giving a reasonable opportunity of being heard to the assessee. So section 142A talks about the reference to the valuation officer. The assessing officer may, for the purpose of assessment, make a reference to the valuation officer to estimate the value of what? To estimate the value of the asset, property, or the investments. Now it is mandatory for the valuation officer to estimate the value of the asset after considering the evidences which are received from the assessee or the evidences gathered by the valuation officer himself. He will value the property and submit the report to assessing officer and the assessee within 6 months from end of the month in which the reference was made. Then after receiving the report, again it is in the hands of the assessing officer either to consider the report or ignore the report. Let us do a quick recap of it. Section 142 subsection A. Section 142A, reference to the valuation officer. The assessing officer may refer the case to the valuation officer. It is at the discretion of the assessing officer to refer the case to the valuation officer for the purpose of assessment. This officer shall do the valuation of what? Shall do the valuation of asset, property, or investments. Asset, property, or investments. Assessing officer may refer the case to valuation officer. Valuation officer shall do the valuation of asset, property, and investment. How he will value? By gathering the evidences from the assessee, or he himself will gather the evidences. Based on these evidences, he will value the asset. Once the asset valuation is done, what is the maximum time limit to issue the report? See the date of reference. Go to the end of the month in which the reference was made. From the end of the month, 6 months is provided. So this is the maximum time limit for the valuation officer to submit the report to the assessing officer or the assessee. Assessing officer and the assessee. Then it is again at the discretion of the assessing officer either to use the report of the valuation officer or to ignore the report of valuation officer. If he is using the report of valuation officer, the assessing officer has to give a reasonable opportunity of being heard to the assessee. Now section 143 subsection 1, that is processing of returns, that is intimation. This is an important section and very, very relevant in the practical scenario. Section 143 subsection 1, processing of return, that is intimation. All returns, 100%, all returns shall mandatorily, all returns 100% shall be processed under section 143 subsection 1 and following adjustments to be made in the return income. So all the returns that are filed in India will be 100% processed under section 143 subsection 1. And what will be checked by the software? The software will check whether there are any arithmetical errors in the return. If there are any arithmetical errors like any calculation mistake, then for that intimation is issued to the SSC. Second scenario, when the intimation can be issued, there is an incorrect claim of the SSC in the return of income. The SSC has claimed something incorrectly in the return of income. What is the example of incorrect claim? Example, the TDS claim is not matching with form 26AS. We know that the 26AS form is of TDS. So the TDS which is claimed by the SSC or the taxpayer is not matching with 26AS. If there is any mismatch of TDS with 26AS, intimation under section 143 subsection 1 will be issued to the SSC, or deduction under section 80C claimed more than rupees 1,50,000. We all are aware that the deduction maximum deduction under section 80C is 1,50,000 only. But if the taxpayer claims the deduction more than rupees 1,50,000, then intimation under section 143(1) will be issued to the SSC. Third scenario, disallowance of loss if return is filed after the due date. We all know that if we want to claim the loss, the return of income has to be filed within the due date. If the return of income is not filed within the due date, then the loss cannot be considered. So disallowance, if the SSC has filed the return of income after the due date of which is a loss return, then notice under section or intimation under section 143(1) will be issued. Disallowance of expenses indicated in the audit report but not taken into account in computing the total income in the return. There are some expenses which are disallowed in the audit report. There are some expenses which are disallowed in the audit report but are not considered in the total income. In the audit report, the expenses are disallowed, but these expenses are not disallowed in the computation of income. In such scenario, intimation will be issued. Next, disallowance of deduction under section 10AA, 80IA, 80IAB, 80IB, IC, ID, IE. All these deductions will be disallowed if the return is filed after the due date, but the SSC has filed the return after the due date. Even then, he has claimed these deductions. Then intimation under section 143(1) will be issued to the SSC. Next, addition of income appearing in 26AS or form 16A or 16, which has to be included in computing the total income in the return. But from the assessment in 1819 onwards, this clause F has been removed. So we'll not discuss that. So section 143 subsection 1 is very important, which talks about the processing of returns, that is intimation. All returns 100% shall be processed under section 143 subsection 1. What is checked? Arithmetical errors, calculation mistake. Second, incorrect claim. Third, disallowance of loss, disallowance of deduction, disallowance of expenditure, which is not matching with the audit report and computation of income. These calculations are done by the software, and if there is any mismatch, the software itself will issue the intimation under section 143(1). Before making any adjustment, an intimation has to be given to the SSC requiring him to respond to such adjustment. So after this software verification, it cannot be said that the software can do the rectification automatically without any information to the SSC. If the software identifies any mismatch in the data which is apparent on record, the software will issue an intimation to the SSC. Now, after the SSC receives the intimation, he has to respond to the adjustment. He has to respond to such intimation. The response time given to the SSC is 30 days of issue of such intimation. Within 30 days of issue of intimation, the SSC has to reply. If not replied, then the software will do the adjustment by itself. If reply is given, that reply is considered. So after processing, the intimation shall be sent if there is refund or demand or adjustment in losses. Now, after getting the reply from the SSC, it is processed, and the net figure, whether it is refund or demand or adjustment in losses, this even for this intimation is again issued to the SSC. Let us do a quick recap of this section. We are talking about section 143 subsection 1. We are talking about 143 subsection 1, which is the processing of returns, which is intimation and is very common in practical scenario. All returns, 100% returns are processed under section 143(1). The software itself will do the processing. And what does the software look for? The software looks for any arithmetical errors, any incorrect claim, any disallowance of loss if the return is filed after the due date, disallowance of deduction, disallowance of expenditure, that is a mismatch between the audit report and the computation of income. All these aspects are checked by the software. If the software identifies any mismatch, the software will issue an intimation to the SSE. The SSE has to reply to the intimation within 30 days of issue of such intimation. If the SSE does not reply to such intimation, then it is deemed to be accepted by the SSE and the processing is done. Next. What is the time limit? What is the time limit maximum time limit by which the intimation can be issued? The maximum time limit by which the intimation can be issued is 1 year. 1 year from end of the financial year in which such return was filed. Suppose for the year 1920. For the year 1920, the return is filed on 31st July 2020. For the financial year 1920, the return is filed by 31st July 2020. So from the end of the financial year in which the return was filed, the return was filed in the financial year 2021. The return was filed in the financial year 2021. So from 31st March 2021, 1 year will be given. That is 31st March 2022. So by 31st March 2022, the intimation can be sent. So the intimation shall be issued within 1 year from the end of the financial year in which the return was filed, not for the financial year for which the return belongs to. The return belongs to 1920, but the return was filed in 2021. So 31st March 2021 to 1 year comes to 31st March 2022. So by 31st March 2022, the intimation can be issued. For the department can issue the intimation from end of the financial year in which the return was filed plus 1 year. And for the SSC to respond to the intimation, 30 days from the date of issue of intimation is provided. Now, section 143, subsection 1D, notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, the processing of a return shall not be necessary where a notice has been issued to the SSC under section 143.2. If a notice has been issued to the SSC under section 143.2, then processing of return under section 143.1 is not mandatory. Earlier in the section 143.1, what did we refer? We have understood that all returns 100% are verified under section 143.1. But there is an exception to it. What is the exception? If the notice is already issued under section 143.2, then processing of return under section 143.1 is not necessary, provided that the provisions of this subsection shall not apply to any return furnished for the assessment year 17-18 onwards. So this section is not relevant from assessment year 17-18 onwards. So this is not important for us. Next comes very important section, section 143.2, that is the notice of scrutiny, which is very common in practical life. Scrutiny assessment. We might have heard during our articleship period that the employer goes for scrutiny representation. The scrutiny assessment is very, very common in day-to-day practice. So section 143 subsection 2 is the notice of scrutiny. Section 143 subsection 2 is the notice of scrutiny. Section 143 subsection 2 is the notice of scrutiny. For making assessment under section 143.3, for making assessment under section 143.3, notice under section 143.2 is required. For making assessment under section 143.3, notice under section 143.2 is required. For making assessment under section 143.3, assessing officer is required to serve notice under section 143.2. The notice has to be served. It is not talking about the issue of notice. It is talking about the service of notice. The notice under section 143.2 has to be served to the SSC within 6 months from the end of the financial year in which the return was filed. For financial year 1920, the return was filed on 31st July 2020. End of the return was filed on 31st March 2020, means the financial year is what? 2021. Last date of financial year is 31st March 2021. from here 6 months is provided, that is 30th September 2021. So this notice of scrutiny can be issued up to 30th September 2021. Let us do a quick recap of this. We are discussing section 143 subsection 2, that is the notice of scrutiny. For making assessment under section 143 subsection 3, assessing officer is required to serve a notice under section 143.2. For assessment under section 143.3, assessing officer is required to serve notice under section 143.2. The notice has to be served, not just issued. The notice has to be served. The SSC should receive the notice served. The notice has to be served within 6 months from the end of the financial year in which the return was furnished. So for financial year 1920, the SSC has filed the return on 30th September 2020. End of the financial year of filing is 31st March 2021, plus 6 months is 30th September 2021. So from 30th, maximum by 30th September 2021 for the financial 1920, notice under section 143.2 can be issued. Notice under section 143.2 can be issued after issuing intimation under section 143.1. So just because that the intimation under section 143.1 is issued, it cannot be said that the notice under section 143.2 cannot be issued. For issue of notice under section 143.2, 143.1 is of no link. So 143.1, 143.2, 143.3. 143.1 is intimation, 143.2 is notice of scrutiny assessment, and 143.3 is the scrutiny assessment actual. I repeat, 143.1 is the intimation, 143.2 is the notice of scrutiny, 143.3 is the scrutiny assessment. 143.1 is the intimation, 143.2 is the notice for scrutiny, 143.3 is the scrutiny assessment. Now section 143.3, which is the scrutiny assessment. Section 143.3, order of scrutiny assessment. Based on material and evidences furnished by the SSC. Based on the material and evidences furnished by the SSC in response to notice under section 143.2 or gathered by the assessing officer, the assessing officer shall determine the income or loss of the SSC. So in this section, loss can also be determined by the assessing officer. It is not necessary that only the income will be determined. The assessing officer can even determine the loss of the SSC by way of passing in order along with the determination of tax payable or refundable. Refund bhi kar sakta hai assessing officer under this section. So under this section, the assessing officer can increase the income or reduce the income also, can even make the SSC pay the taxes, can even make the department pay refund to the SSC. Both the scenarios are possible under section 143.3, which is the scrutiny assessment. Based on material and evidences furnished by the SSC. So the assessing officer has issued the notice under section 143.2. After issue of notice, the SSC is furnishing the material and the evidences. So based on this information or the information gathered by the assessing officer, based on both these informations, the assessing officer can determine the tax payable or refundable to the SSC. Any institution to whom exemption under section 1021, 1022B, 1023A, 1023B, 10, etc. are available, then the assessing officer cannot disallow such exemption if any contravention made by the institutions. Assessing officer will inform the government or prescribed authority about the same. For government notification, he can under section 143.3 disallow the exemption if the prescribed authority has rescinded the notification withdrawing the exemption. So basically under section 143.3, what you have to remember is the assessing officer issues the notice under section 143.2. The SSC submits the relevant information and evidences. Based on this information and the information gathered by the assessing officer himself, based on both these informations, the assessing officer passes the order for making the SSC pay the taxes to the government or making the taxes refundable to the SSC. Both the scenarios are possible. Then 143.3A, 3B, 3C scheme to be notified by the central government for greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability. The scheme which is notified by the central government for greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability. The central government is empowered to notify a scheme for assessing the total income or loss of the SSC under section 143.3. So the central government is empowered to notify a scheme. The central government will notify a scheme where the total income or loss of the SSC will be assessed under section 143.3. The scheme would ensure greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability by eliminating the interface between the assessing officer and the SSC in the course the course of proceedings to the extent of technologically feasible. So the interface between the SSC and the assessing officer is eliminated to the extent possible. So this scheme is not very important. This is nothing but e-assessment. This topic is of e-assessment, which will keep it pending as of now. Next, section 144, which is the best judgment assessment. Section 144 is the best judgment assessment. In case of any one of the following four defaults, the assessing officer shall make an assessment to the best of his judgment. If any of these four defaults are done by the SSC, then the assessing officer can do the best judgment assessment. First default is what? The failure to furnish the return of income under section 139(1) or 139(4) or 139(5). First default is what? The SSC has furnished the return of income. The SSC has failed to furnish the return of income under section 139(1) or 139(4) or 139(5), or the SSC has failed to comply with the notice under section 142(1), or failure to comply with the directions issued under section 142(2)(a), that is for special audit, failure to comply with the notice under section 143(2), scrutiny notice. If any of these four conditions are not satisfied, then the assessing officer can proceed for best judgment assessment. What are the four conditions? First condition is that the return of income is not filed by the SSC under section 139(1), 4 or 5. 139(1), 4, 5. 139(1) or 139(4) or 139(5). The SSC has not filed the return of income. This is the first violation. Or 142(1) notice is issued, the SSC does not follow that. Or 142(2)(a) special audit instruction is issued, SSC does not follow that. Next, 143(2) scrutiny notice is issued, the SSC does not follow that either. So if any of this, not all, if any of these four conditions are fulfilled, then the assessing officer can proceed to the best judgment assessment of the SSC. The best judgment assessment can be taken up only after issuing a show cause notice, giving an opportunity of being heard to the SSC under section 144. So it is important that before proceeding for the best judgment, the assessing officer has to give an opportunity of being heard to the SSC by issuing a show cause notice. No opportunity of being heard is given if SSC fails to comply with the notice under section 142(1). If the assessing officer has already issued a notice under section 142(1), that is the inquiry before the assessment, then the SSC does not respond to it, then the assessing officer can proceed with best judgment assessment, and there is no requirement on the part of the assessing officer to issue another show cause notice under section 144 before proceeding with the best judgment assessment. It is deemed that the notice which is issued under section 142(1) is the show cause notice, and directly can proceed for the best judgment assessment. No refund can be issued by the assessing officer under section 144. When we have seen the scrutiny assessment, that is under section 143(3), there was a power on the part of the assessing officer to either make the order as a tax payable to the SSC, or tax payable by the SSC, or refundable to the SSC. Tax payable by the SSC or refundable to the SSC. So section 143(3) can conclude in favor of the department or against the department also. But under section 144, section 144 order will only conclude in favor of the department. It won't conclude in favor of the SSC. So no refund can be issued by the assessing officer under section 144. Assessment under section 143(3) and 144 should be completed. That is, the order should be passed. Completion of assessment, what is the time limit? Within 12 months from the end of the relevant assessment year. Within 12 months from the end of the relevant assessment year. Relevant assessment year means for the financial year 1920, the assessment year is 2021. End of the relevant assessment year is 31st March 2021. 12 months from the end of the relevant assessment year means 31st March 2022. So for the financial year 1920, by 31st March 2022, the order under section 143(3) or 144 has to be passed. I repeat, what is the maximum time limit for issue of order under section 143(3) or 144? The order under section 143(3) or 144 should be completed. The assessment should be completed, or the order must be passed within 12 months. 12 months from the end of the relevant assessment year. What is the meaning of relevant assessment for the financial year 1920? The assessment year is 2021. End of the relevant assessment year is 31st March 2020. 1 year from the end of the relevant assessment year is 31st March 2022. So for the financial 1920, 31st March 2022 is the last date by which the order must be passed under section 143(3) or 144. Where best judgment assessment is done, the assessing officer determines the income to the best of his judgment. Judgment of the assessing officer cannot be arbitrary and has to be based on some evidence. Assessing officer cannot do ad hoc addition. As the name itself says that it is the best judgment assessment, it does not mean that the assessing officer will do ad hoc addition without any basis. First, he has to gather the information, sufficient evidence, and based on this evidence only, he has to do the addition of income or determine the income of the SSC. By the meaning best judgment assessment does not mean that the assessing officer will do ad hoc addition without any basis. There has to be some basis on the part of the assessing officer to do the assessment under section 144. Next, section 144A, power of joint commissioner to issue direction. A joint commissioner, JC, may on his own motion, JC on his own motion, or on the application of SSC, the JC on his own motion or on application by the SSC, the JC on his own motion or on application by the SSC, the JC on his own motion or on application by the SSC, or on reference made by the AO. The JC himself can do, the assessing officer refers, or the SSC refers. The JC himself can do, the assessing officer can refer, or the SSC can refer. In either of these three scenarios, the power under section 144A can be invoked by the joint commissioner. A joint commissioner may on his own motion or on application made by the SSC or on reference made by the assessing officer call to examine the record of any proceeding in which the assessment is pending. Wherever in any proceeding, if any assessment is pending, if in any proceeding the assessment is pending, the joint commissioner can call for the records of the proceeding and he himself can do the assessment. So the assessing officer himself can call for the pending assessment details, or the assessing officer can request the JC to take up, or the SSC can request the JC to take up. Then if the case is pending, the joint commissioner will call for the relevant information and he himself will do the assessment. It is necessary then JC may issue directions for the guidance of the assessing officer. By assessing officer, we mean the assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, or the income tax officer, to enable him to complete the assessment. So the joint commissioner will issue directions to the assessing officer. The joint commissioner will issue directions to the assessing officer in order to guide him on how to complete the assessment. Directions shall be binding on the assessing officer. Directions given by the joint commissioner shall be binding. The assessing officer has to comply with the directions of the joint commissioner. Direction prejudicial to SSC can be issued only after giving opportunity of being heard. If the JC wants to give some directions to the assessing officer, it means that the assessing officer has to mandatorily follow the directions of the joint commissioner. And if such directions are going against the SSC, the joint commissioner first issue an opportunity of being heard to the SSC, hear from the SSC, and then only give such direction. No appeal can be filed against the direction. Appeal can be filed against the assessment order. So against this direction, no appeal can be filed. On the basis of this direction, the order which is passed by the assessing officer, against that order, appeal can be filed. Against the direction of the joint commission, appeal cannot be filed. Against the order which the AO passes on the direction of the joint commission, against that order, appeal can be filed. Section 144C, reference to dispute resolution panel, DRP. The assessing officer, while making assessment, is bound to follow the procedure of forwarding draft order in the following cases. The assessing officer, while making assessment, is bound to follow the procedure of forwarding the draft order in the following cases. In the following case of foreign company, other SSC's assessing officer shall follow a copy of the draft order to the SSC. This is not very important, so I'm skipping that. Section 145 subsection 1, method of accounting. Section 145 subsection 1, which is the method of accounting. For PGBP and income from other sources, cash or mercantile system can be adopted. For PGBP and income from other sources, cash or mercantile system can be adopted. For salary, house property, capital gains, no method is prescribed. These incomes are taxable as per the specific rules applicable to them. For PGBP and income from other sources, cash or mercantile system can be adopted. For any other head of income, no specific instruction is provided. For capital gains are taxable in the year of transfer. For capital gains are taxable in the year of transfer. Salary is taxable on receipt or accrual basis, whichever is earlier. Then section 145(2), income computation and disclosure standards. In section 145(2), income computation and disclosure standards. ICDS is not very important right now for practical point of view. Let us just glance through it. Capital gains has been empowered to notify, central government Central government has been empowered to notify the ICDS. Central government has recently notified 10 ICDS effective from assessment year 17-18 for computing the income under the head PGP and income from other sources who are following mercantile system of accounting. So the ICDS are applicable to whom? The ICDS are applicable to those persons who are following the mercantile system of accounting for PGBP and income from other sources. ICDS are applicable to whom? ICDS are applicable to those cases, those SSCs who are following the mercantile system of accounting for income from other sources and PGBP. It is applied to all SSCs except individual or HUF, not required to get accounts audited under section 144 under section 44 AB. For individuals HUF, for individuals and HUF who are liable to audit under section 44 AB, who are following the mercantile system of accounting for PGBP and IFOS, then only ICDS is applicable. For individuals and HUFs who are not liable to tax audit, then ICDS is not applicable. For individuals and HUF who are liable to tax audit but are not doing the accounting as per the mercantile system, even then the ICDS are not applicable. What are the ICDS standards? Disclosure of accounting policy. ICDS 1 is disclosure of accounting policy. ICDS 2 is valuation of inventories. ICDS 3 is construction contracts. ICDS 4 is revenue recognition. ICDS 5 is tangible fixed assets. 6, the effect of change in foreign exchange. 7, government grants. 8, securities. 9, borrowing cost. 10, provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. Valuation of inventory, securities, and other securities listed and quoted in recognized stock exchange, cost or NRV, whichever is lower. For other securities, actual cost initially recognized. For other, cost or NRV, whichever is lower. Section 147, assessment or reassessment of income escaping assessment, which is very important. Assessment or reassessment of income escaping assessment, which is very important. We'll discuss this in the next video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you like this video. If you like this video, do like the video, share it with your friends and relatives. If you have any queries, you can mention in the comment section below. And if you have not subscribed to our channel, click on the subscribe button, which is in red color. And just beside the subscribe button, you'll find a bell icon. If you click on the bell icon, whenever we upload new videos, you'll get the notification. Thank you for watching.